Hello, my name is Sable, and this is the story of how my parents left me at a train station with nothing but a half-charged phone and a lie. They said it was a joke, but I never went home. If you're watching this, chances are you've had moments where you questioned the people who were supposed to protect you. Maybe it was something small, a dismissive comment that stuck with you too long, or maybe it was something bigger, like the day you realized you were on your own, long before anyone said it out loud. I know that feeling. I lived it. This isn't one of those stories where I stand here to tell you I had a perfect childhood. It wasn't all bad, but it was never safe. My mother, Diane, believed in tough love, and my father, Robert, believed in silence. I grew up learning that love was something you earned, and survival was something you figured out on your own, but nothing prepared me for the day they decided I wasn't worth bringing home. It was midsummer in Alabama, the kind of heat that soaks through your skin and leaves you breathless, like you're swimming through the air. I was coming back from visiting a cousin on my mom's side. A weekend trip they arranged, maybe to give me a break from their constant nitpicking, or maybe they just needed me out of the way. I never really knew with them. We were supposed to meet at the train station in Montgomery. I'd texted Diane when I got there. Here, waiting near the benches, she replied, "Be there soon, stay put." I believed her. I sat on one of those old iron benches, paint peeling in flakes, digging into the backs of my legs through my jeans. The hum of vending machines filled the silence, broken only by the occasional buzz of a fly circling overhead. I pulled out a paperback from my backpack, one I'd read a dozen times before, a small comfort against the gnawing edge of unease. I didn't know then that this would be the last thing I'd ever do as their daughter. 45 minutes passed. The Alabama sun dipped lower, heavy in the sky. Sweat clung to my neck, and I tried calling Diane. It rang twice, then voicemail. I tried Robert, straight to voicemail. Maybe traffic. Maybe something came up. I shifted on the bench, checked the messages again. Nothing. And then, at 7:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Let's see how you figure it out." For a second, I didn't understand. My thumb hovered over the screen, rereading those words. "Let's see how you figure it out." No laughing emoji, no follow-up. I typed back, "What do you mean?" No reply. Another 5 minutes. I called again, straight to voicemail. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something that felt like betrayal, blooming slow and steady in my chest. My phone battery blinked red, the life draining out of it the way trust was draining out of me. This wasn't just another lesson. This wasn't one of their twisted games. I stood up, scanning the near-empty parking lot. The station attendant was locking up the small office window, his back to me. A family with 2 small kids climbed into a minivan, laughter spilling into the evening air. For a moment, I felt like I was watching life happen through glass, separate, untouchable. I sat back down, gripping the straps of my backpack like they were the only things holding me together. I could feel the heat of the concrete radiating through my shoes. My throat burned, but I forced the tears down, because I knew. Deep down, I knew this wasn't a mistake. They weren't coming back. I wish I could tell you I reacted with strength, that I stood up right then, dusted off, and walked away without a second thought. But that's not the truth. The truth is, I sat there for nearly 2 hours, hoping for headlights to pull into the lot, hoping for that old familiar rumble of our SUV, hoping for something I should have stopped hoping for a long time ago. The battery died at 8:07 p.m. I watched the screen go black. The final thread snapped. There wasn't anyone I could call, no one who'd come. That's the thing about growing up in a house where love is transactional. You learn not to ask for help, because help always comes with a price. A man about my father's age passed by, glancing over with something like concern in his eyes. But I smiled, the kind of brittle smile you wear when you don't want anyone to ask if you're okay. He nodded, kept walking. I wasn't okay, but I'd be damned if anyone saw it. As the sky darkened, the station lights flickered on, buzzing against the quiet. The last bus out of town pulled in just past midnight. I heard the driver call it out to the handful of passengers waiting by the curb. "Birmingham. Final stop, Birmingham." I didn't know a single person in Birmingham, but that didn't matter. What mattered was it was away from here, away from the empty space my parents left behind. I stood, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and walked toward the bus. I didn't cry. Not until the bus doors hissed shut behind me, and the platform disappeared into the darkness. That night, I left behind more than a town. I left behind the last pieces of whatever hope I'd had in them. I didn't know where I was going or how I'd survive, but I knew one thing: I was never going back. When the people who are supposed to love you the most become the ones who hurt you, what would you do? Birmingham wasn't a city I chose. It was just the place the last bus could take me that night, a name on a sign that meant I wasn't standing alone at that station anymore. But when I stepped off that bus as the sky bled into dawn, with nothing but a backpack and a fading sense of who I was supposed to be, Birmingham became the place I decided I wouldn't disappear. The first few nights were the hardest. I slept in the back corner of an all-night diner, tucked into a booth where the waitresses turned a blind eye, as long as I ordered coffee and didn't cause trouble. There's something about being invisible that sharpens your senses. You learn to watch people, listen between the lines, figure out where you can exist without drawing too much attention. I washed up in public restrooms, counted my dollars like they were lifelines, and scoured bulletin boards for jobs that paid cash. I found my first gig bussing tables at a dive bar that didn't ask too many questions. The work was gritty, scraping half-eaten plates, wiping down sticky counters, but it kept me moving, and moving felt better than standing still. I made a promise to myself every morning before the sun rose: just keep going. There's a difference between surviving and living, though. For a while, I did just that: survive. I kept my head down, worked late hours, slept where I could. I learned to stretch every dollar, to buy the cheapest meals that would keep me standing. But every so often, a voice crept in: this can't be it. It was an old bookstore that cracked me open. A corner shop tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, its windows cluttered with handwritten signs and sun-bleached paperbacks. I wasn't looking for anything. I just needed to kill time between shifts. But the second I walked through the door, the smell of aged paper and dust felt like home. Behind the counter stood Marjorie, sorting through a box of donated books. She had sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, the kind of woman who'd seen enough to know better but still kept her doors open. "You gonna stand there all day or find something worth reading?" she asked without looking up. I blinked, caught off guard. "Just browsing." She eyed me over the rims of her glasses. "You look like you need more than that." Maybe it was the way she said it, plain, without pity. Maybe it was the way my shoulders sagged when I realized someone actually saw me. But I found myself coming back. First once a week, then more often. I started helping her shelve books in exchange for a quiet place to sit, sometimes slipping into the back room to escape the noise of the city. It was Marjorie who asked me, weeks later, over a mug of stale coffee, "What are you running from?" I hesitated. Not running, just starting over. She studied me for a long moment. "Then you'd better start learning how to stand still and build something." It wasn't a grand plan, not at first. I took more shifts, dishwashing at a diner, cleaning rooms at a rundown motel. I found a studio apartment the size of a closet with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. 4 walls where no one could tell me to leave. And I started to learn. Not just about surviving, but about money. About the way people used it to trap or free each other. It wasn't lost on me that my parents always controlled the purse strings, always made sure I knew exactly how much I owed them, for the roof over my head, for the food on my plate. So I made a choice. I wouldn't just work to get by, I'd learn how money worked. I enrolled in night classes at a local community college, scraping together enough to pay for textbooks and tuition. Every number I wrote down, every financial term I studied felt like taking back something they'd stolen. Marjorie saw what I was doing even before I did. "You've got a head for this," she told me one afternoon as I helped her balance the register. "But more than that, you've got heart. You know what it's like to be on the wrong end of a bad deal." That stuck with me. The wrong end of a bad deal. That's where so many people lived. People like me trying to build something from scraps. And that's when the idea for Beacon Consulting was born. It wasn't much at first. A website I built from free templates, offering financial coaching to anyone who needed help budgeting, saving, crawling out from under debt. I posted flyers in coffee shops, community centers, laundromats. It wasn't about making money. It was about making sure no one else got trapped like I did. But slowly people came. A single mom trying to figure out how to get out of payday loan cycles. A college kid buried under credit card debt. a woman whose husband controlled every cent she spent. They came, and they trusted me with their stories. I wasn't just giving them numbers. I was giving them tools, and each time I helped someone stand a little taller, I felt a piece of myself come back. But even as I built something solid, even as Beacon grew, the memory of that train station never left me. It sat at the base of my spine, a quiet reminder of what it meant to be disposable, of what it meant to be left behind, and that memory kept me going. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing? The thing about building a life from the ground up is you start to believe the past can't touch you anymore. You work hard enough, stay focused long enough, and maybe, just maybe, you convince yourself you've outrun the shadows. I almost believed that. Beacon Consulting was growing faster than I ever expected. My days were filled with clients, community events, speaking engagements. I'd become the person I never imagined I could be, someone others looked to for guidance, someone stable, someone whole. And then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where everything felt settled. The late summer sun filtered through my office window, casting soft light across the worn oak desk Marjorie had insisted I take when she downsized her store. I'd just finished reviewing a budget plan for a young couple trying to buy their first home, the kind of work that left me feeling useful. I didn't recognize the number on the screen. For a moment, I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something, instinct, dread, maybe both, made me swipe to answer. Sable, the voice on the other end cracked, breathless, familiar in a way that hit me somewhere raw. It was Avery. My sister's name hadn't crossed my lips in over a decade. Hearing it now felt like stepping onto thin ice. One wrong move and everything beneath me would give way. Avery? My voice caught somewhere between confusion and caution. She exhaled sharply. Yeah, it's me. I didn't know if you'd answer. I leaned back, gripping the arm of my chair as though it could tether me to the present. Why are you calling? Her voice wavered. It's Dad. Robert, he's sick, Sable, kidney failure. The doctors say he won't last long without a transplant. The words hung there, weightless and heavy all at once. I said nothing. Let the silence press against her. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't serious, she rushed on. He's on dialysis, but it's not enough. They tested me already, and I'm not a match. They need family, immediate family. Sable, you could save him. I closed my eyes. The room swayed, though I sat perfectly still. I hadn't thought about Robert in years. Hadn't allowed myself to imagine him as anything but a shadow in my past. To picture him vulnerable felt foreign, like rewriting a story I'd already finished. I don't owe him anything, I said quietly. Avery's breath hitched. Please, I know what they did. I know how bad it got, but he's still our father. Our father, I echoed, the words tasting bitter. The same man who sat silent while Diane left me at that train station? The man who never once reached out after? I know, she whispered. I know it was wrong, but you've moved on, right? You have this whole life now. You're strong enough. Don't let this be the thing that defines you. Her words hit a nerve I didn't even know was exposed. Strong enough, as if strength was about sacrificing myself again. You don't get to decide what defines me, Avery. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken things, and then, softly, she tried again. We gave you life, Sable. You owe us yours. I flinched, heat rising to my face. That line, I could hear Diane in it, could almost feel the sting of her voice threading guilt like a needle through skin. That's not love, I said, my voice steady now. That's control. I almost hung up, almost, but some part of me, some stubborn shard of the girl they left behind, held the phone to my ear. I'm not saying yes, I told her, but I'll get tested. That's all. The relief in her voice was immediate, too eager. Thank you, that's all I'm asking. Just get tested. But we both knew that wasn't all. I hung up and sat in the quiet, letting the weight of it settle. I stared out the window at the life I'd built brick by brick, the consulting firm, the clients I'd helped, the independence I fought for, and I felt the tremor of something dangerous. The past doesn't call to ask for help. It calls to pull you back under. Would you let go of the past to save someone who never saved you? Getting tested was easy, emotionless, almost sterile, the way hospitals often make everything feel mechanical. I signed the forms, rolled up my sleeve, gave the blood they needed, and left without looking back. They told me it would take a few days for the results. I told myself I wouldn't think about it, but that's not how trauma works. For 3 days, I buried myself in work. I met with clients, organized workshops, wrote newsletters for Beacon's growing mailing list. I smiled in meetings, nodded at success stories, but beneath the surface, the past was humming like a low-grade fever, always there, warming the edges of my resolve. On the 4th day, the phone rang again. I let it buzz until the voicemail picked up. I couldn't bring myself to hear Avery's voice, not yet, but curiosity won out, and I played back the message. "It's Avery. You're a match. You can save him." That was all she said. No, thank you. No acknowledgement of what that meant, for me, for the history between us. Just the expectation that I would fall in line, do the right thing, as if those words alone erased 2 decades of silence. I sat there, staring at the wall of my office, feeling the weight of that truth settle like stones in my stomach. I was a match, but I wasn't theirs anymore. I kept the news to myself. I needed space to think, to feel everything that was crashing down at once. But the world wouldn't give me that space. 2 days later, it started. I logged into Beacon's social media accounts, expecting the usual comments, questions about budgeting, messages of gratitude from clients. Instead, I found a storm. A photo of me as a child standing stiffly between Diane and Robert at some family barbecue was splashed across a post I never made. The caption beneath it was cutting, "Our daughter, Sable, abandoned us when we needed her most. Family should mean something," shared hundreds of times, comments piling up like debris after a flood. How could anyone turn their back on their parents? No amount of success makes up for a cold heart. She should be ashamed. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It didn't take long to trace it back. Diane. Her Facebook profile was public, her words designed to sting in that way only family knows how to do. She knew exactly what picture to post, knew the narrative that would cut deepest, the ungrateful daughter, the selfish one. For a moment, I almost believed it. That old programming is hard to shake. The part of me that still craved approval, still wanted to be seen as good, as worthy. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I took a breath, a long, steadying inhale that filled my lungs with something stronger than guilt, resolve. I picked up the phone and called Avery. She answered on the second ring, her voice soft, tentative. "Sable?" "You and Diane started this," I said, no softness in my voice. "You dragged me through the mud, hoping I'd bend," she sputtered. I didn't know she'd post that. I told her not to." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You knew exactly what she'd do. You're playing the same game you've always played." Silence stretched between us, heavy. "Sable," Avery tried again. "People are watching. Everyone's talking about it. If you care at all about how this looks..." "That's the thing." I cut her off, my voice cool. "I don't care how it looks. I care about the truth, and you just gave me all the proof I need that none of you have changed." I hung up before she could say more. For the first time in years, I felt clear. But clarity doesn't quiet the noise. The posts kept spreading. The comments kept coming. I knew I could respond, defend myself. But part of me wondered if it would even matter. People believe the stories they want to believe. Still, I couldn't let this be the end of it. I started gathering everything, screenshots of the posts, copies of the messages Diane had sent me in the past, proof of their silence all those years. Every piece of evidence that told the real story, the one they were trying to erase. And I began to write. Not a defensive statement, not an argument, a story. The truth about the girl they left at a train station. The truth about survival and how sometimes the family you're born into is the thing you have to escape to become whole. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew it was time to stop hiding. The past was knocking. I was ready to answer. Have you ever had to reclaim your story from someone who twisted it? I didn't respond to the public smear campaign, not yet. Not in the way they expected. There was a strange power in silence, especially when you knew what was coming next. Let them think I was weak, that the shame might force me back into the mold they designed. Let them believe they still held the strings. They didn't know I'd cut them a long time ago. Instead, I did the one thing I knew would throw them off balance. I reached out. Avery picked up immediately, voice brittle with anticipation. "Sable?" "I've thought about it," I said, calm, detached. "If I can help, I will. I'm willing to move forward with the transplant. The silence on her end was deafening. Then, You mean it? Yes, I said, but I have some conditions. Her breath caught. What kind of conditions? Nothing legal, I said, just boundaries, no press, no public statements, no more social media. If this is about saving his life, we do it quietly. I heard the calculation behind her hesitation. Okay, yes, of course. She wanted to win, they all did, but I wasn't playing the same game. The next few days moved quickly. I met with doctors, reviewed surgical options. I played the part of the willing daughter, calm, cooperative, kind, and behind the scenes I documented everything, every meeting, every phone call, every awkward silence when Diane couldn't quite meet my eye. I started recording conversations, discreetly of course. Alabama was a one-party consent state. I knew my rights, the audio was damning. Diane, hissing across the living room after one hospital consult, I don't care if she's doing it or not. As soon as that surgery's done, she's out of our lives again. Robert, weak, barely speaking, still found the breath to say, let her do what she's good for and be done with it. They didn't know I was holding my phone beneath the blanket on my lap, letting the microphone soak it all in. I didn't flinch. I nodded, gave them small smiles. I made them believe I was there for closure, for redemption. But I wasn't. I was there for the truth. 3 days before the scheduled surgery, I invited them to lunch. Neutral ground, a quiet bistro tucked into the corner of a downtown hotel. Avery was anxious, Diane on edge. Robert didn't show. He was back in the hospital, too unstable to travel. Good. I wanted them both present, alive, alert. When the curtain lifted, I ordered tea. They didn't touch their drinks. Diane leaned in. You sure you're up for this? I met her gaze without blinking. Yes, but there's something I want to say first. Avery shifted nervously. Okay. I pulled a small recorder from my purse and set it on the table. Neither of them spoke. I've kept quiet long enough, I said. But I've documented everything. Your calls, your messages, your posts, and your conversations. Diane's face drained of color. I know you didn't come back into my life because you love me, I said, voice low but clear. You came back because you needed something, again, and once again you assumed I would be too desperate for love to notice. You're being dramatic, Diane snapped. No, I said, calm as a still lake. I'm being honest. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Avery's eyes widened. What's that? Notarized withdrawal paperwork. I'm formally rescinding consent to the transplant, effective immediately. She grabbed the envelope, skimmed the top. Her hands began to shake. You said, I said I was willing to help, I replied. Then I saw who you still are. Diane's voice dropped to a snarl. You ungrateful. I stood, slow and steady. You left me at a train station with a dead phone and no way home, I said. I built everything I have without a single ounce of your help. I've paid my dues, and I owe you nothing. I picked up the recorder and slipped it into my bag. You said I'd never survive without you, I added. Turns out I thrived, and now you can sit with the consequences. Neither of them moved, neither spoke, just watched me walk out the door, and I didn't look back. Have you ever pretended to forgive someone just to show them who you've become without them? There's a particular kind of quiet that comes after confrontation. It's not peace. Not yet. More like standing in the eye of the storm. Everything feels still, but you know the winds are circling, waiting for the next move. After that lunch, after I laid down the truth at their feet and walked away, I waited. I watched the fallout unfold from a distance. Diane and Avery went silent. The social media posts stopped. For the first time in weeks, there were no new attacks, no fresh attempts to shame me back into submission. But the silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. They were regrouping. That's how people like them work. When control slips through their fingers, they scramble to build another narrative. Another lie. I wasn't going to give them the chance. For years, I kept my story close, held it like something fragile, afraid that if I told it, no one would believe me. Afraid that if I showed the cracks, I'd fall apart. But standing in that storm, I realized something. My silence wasn't protecting me. It was protecting them, so I told the truth. I sat in my office one late evening, the city lights flickering against the window panes like fireflies, and recorded a video. No script, no edits. Just me, the weight of everything I'd carried, and the decision to finally set it down. My name is Sable, I began, my voice steady but soft. And I want to tell you a story. I spoke of the train station, of being left behind with nothing but a backpack and a text that said, "Let's see how you figure it out." I spoke of building a life from scratch, of Beacon Consulting, of the clients who taught me just as much as I helped them. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I spoke of manipulation, of guilt dressed up as love, of how some families are masters of rewriting history, framing survival as betrayal. And I told them in no uncertain terms that I wasn't going to apologize for saving myself. The video wasn't angry. It wasn't a plea for sympathy. It was just the truth, stripped bare. And when I clicked publish, I felt the first breath of real freedom I'd ever taken. At first, I didn't know if anyone would listen, but they did. The video spread, quietly at first. Shares, comments, messages from strangers who said they saw themselves in my story. People who'd been written out of their families, painted as villains for setting boundaries. The momentum built, one voice turning into hundreds, then thousands. And the narrative shifted. The same people who once called me selfish, ungrateful, cold, they started asking questions. They looked at Diane and Robert's posts with new eyes. The comments turned. Sympathy turned. The tide turned. I didn't revel in their downfall. This wasn't about revenge in the way most people think of it. This was about reclaiming my story before they could twist it again. But I wasn't done, because while the public was listening, another name appeared in my inbox, a woman named Eleanor, someone I'd never met. Her message was brief but hit like a stone to the chest. "I heard about your story. My husband's been waiting for a transplant for 2 years. If you're still willing to donate, I know someone who'd be grateful." I sat with that message for a long time, turned it over and over. I had already made my choice about Robert, but the idea of giving life to someone who wanted it, who would respect it, felt like the kind of justice that left no bitterness behind. So I reached out, quietly, without fanfare. The hospital processed everything, without questions. The match was good, the surgery date was set. I never met Eleanor's husband. I didn't need to. I just knew that if I was going to give a part of myself away, it would be on my terms. Not because of obligation, not because of blood ties, but because I chose it. And that choice, that freedom, meant everything. I covered the hospital expenses, made sure there were no barriers left. It wasn't about charity, it was about closing the circle, about turning something broken into something whole. When the surgery was over, when I woke up and felt the ache in my side, I smiled through the haze of pain. It wasn't about Robert. It was never about him. It was about proving, to myself, to anyone watching, that I could give and not let them take.